My name's Grant. I'm pastor of Mission Hills Community Church, and on this episode of Road Trip Devotional, we're heading out to Sumas Prairie. Now, if you've been living under a rock for the past week and a half, you might not know, but this area of British Columbia that's right by the border in Abbotsford, all the way up to Chilliwack, has basically gone through one of the worst natural disasters that we've ever experienced, at least in recent history. Of course, Sumas Prairie was once a lake. It was a muddy, swampy, mosquito-infested lake that they drained. They put up dikes around it. Well, when this storm came, and it was colossal, I mean, for 3 days, it was honestly something that I could start understanding what the Noah flood was like if it rained for 40 days and nights. Well, it rained for 3 days and nights, and it devastated this area. The water flooded in. And for days, not as much now, but for days, there was the constant buzz of helicopters flying all over the place. This flood and this storm that we faced cut off every single supply line from British Columbia to the rest of Canada. Rail lines were cut off. The pipeline was cut off. All the roads and highways were cut off. This was epic. And right down the road from me, of course, I live in Mission, and we're a little bit on a hill, or a lot of it on a hill. I, for the first time, felt totally helpless in knowing what to do and how I can help someone just down the road, like 20 kilometers down the road. Do you ever feel that way? Well, what I learned this past week is we have a choice. And one of these choices was confronted or given over a radio station yesterday, and I think there's another choice that God gives us. And one of the choices is to think of this selfishly. So I was listening to this radio station yesterday, and the first question the radio host, and this is a popular show, asked was, with all of the supply line being disrupted, how did this weather event affect you over the last weekend? Were you annoyed that there wasn't as much milk on the shelves? Were you frustrated when you couldn't get as much gas as you usually get from the gas station? And I just remember thinking, what a missed opportunity. Because here's the question I think that God asks us in opportunities in times like this. What are you gonna do to help? So I was reading my devotions as I found myself crippled and helpless by this whole thing this past week, and I was in the book of Acts. And one thing I never realized before about the book of Acts is that when the church was born, so when Jesus went up, the Holy Spirit came down, and when the church was born and founded and created, it was founded in a time when there was great need. The need was huge. There wasn't even time to think, build buildings, create programs. The church had to respond to need. So you come to the second chapter of Acts, and this is what you read. They devoted themselves, the church, to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe at the many wonders and signs performed by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had need. And what happened? Well, it says this in verse 47. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. So this is what the early church did. They helped. They become known for addressing the great need, and there was great need at that time. They helped out. They met needs. They fed people. You know, in this area that is full of need, it is now no longer a secret as to what's happening here. People are stepping up. And yesterday I was watching the news, and the news anchor kind of talked to one of the reporters who was live on scene, and they kind of asked the question, now what's the feeling there? And I think there was an expectation that it was going to be this, horrible experience, and people really sad, and people were really hurting. And the reporter on scene who was live says, well, I can encapsulate the feeling in one word. It's hope. And he went on to share all of these different stories of how people have come out to help. In fact, one woman who was sitting in her house with all of the gyprock ripped off her walls, and the house that was just ripped down to the studs. She said, my heart is so full. It was so ironic. Her house was empty of everything that was once so valuable, but she said, my heart was full. Now remember the last time you helped someone, what the feeling was, how invigorating that was. Maybe it was that way because we are never more like God than when we're helping our fellow mankind and creatures. Maybe we feel most like God, and we're more connected to God than ever when we help, because helping is at the core of God's heart. This was demonstrated ultimately when Jesus Christ helped us by going to the cross. So then the question we are all confronted with whenever disaster strikes or whenever there's need in our community is this: is it inconvenience? Is it something that disturbs our comfort? Is the great need in our world something that freezes us or makes us feel guilty? Or does it mobilize us and help us connect with the heart of God and the heart of others? Well, that's all I have today. It's time for me to get my boots on. Have a good one.